Hello family, my name is Chris, I am your home gamer dad, and welcome back to the next Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid Villains Breakdown. Last time we talked about 5 monsters that were one and done on the series. They came in, they were menacing, they did what they had to do, Rangers beat them, explosions all around, boom, they were gone. Now we have 5 more that we need to talk about this time, because this is Monsters of the Week, Part 2. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I definitely recommend checking that out. But what's interesting about those 5 monsters from part 1 is that they can all be found in the same place, inside of the Kickstarter box that you can find on the Renegade website. However, now you have these 5 monsters here, and I'm going to say they're a little bit more complicated and definitely a lot more dangerous than the 5 that I covered last time. These guys can be found in separate expansions. For Villain Pack number 1, you'll find Polluticorn and Commander Crayfish here, as well as Master Vile and Rita. And then in Villain Pack number 3, you'll find King Sphinx, Terror Toad, and Pirantishead. I believe you'll also find Divatox and Thorax, if I'm not mistaken. So both of those villain packs add a lot to it. Not only do you get really tough monsters with there, but also some really hard bosses, including some that say are the hardest in the game. If you are new to my villain breakdowns, welcome. I hope you enjoyed this one. A lot of great classics in this for sure. The way that I'm going to be covering this is that I'll give a little bit of information about each one of the villains as I go along, their deck stats, certain things that are in it, how they stack up and things like that. And then we're going to go ahead and check out each one of their cards individually, show you what they do, best ways to handle them, and I'm going to be assigning them a threat level from 1 to 5. The threat level is pretty much a priority gauge of sorts, how soon it is that you should focus on that card and get rid of it, as opposed to letting certain ones just fire off and let them go and come back to them later type deal. But with that, that is of course just my opinion and how I see it based off of just the deck itself. No other outside influences, though I may mention some here and there. With that, I'd love to hear what your opinions are as well in order to be able to get an idea of exactly what you're up against. I'd love to know if I did something as a high threat, would you have put it low? If I did something as a low threat, would you have put it higher? And why along that ways? So I just want to hear about your experiences, your encounters with each one of these guys, or if you don't have them already, definitely head down to the description section below. There will be links down there as well for you to go and check them out if any of these guys happen to interest you. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get down to business as we learn about these 5 big bad monsters and what they do in order to wreck the Rangers' week. You ready? Let's do this. Nasty pain in the you-know-what, King Sphinx. An Egyptian Sphinx-themed monster, and the first ones the Rangers destroyed while in giant form, King Sphinx has more than just riddles up his sleeve. His power and strength is very close to that of Goldar, and when the two team up, it could spell certain doom for the Rangers. Between all of his powers and abilities, including being able to blow Rangers right out of battle, King Sphinx is very arrogant and overconfident. Traits used by the Rangers to defeat and dethrone this false king. King Sphinx is a monster class enemy within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, which means you have to defeat 4 of his cards in order to remove him from the battlefield. He does have an ability to move Rangers out of the location and away from the battle, as well as some small multi-attacks. Within his deck, 2 of his cards have 3 health, 3 have 4 health, 2 have 5 health, and 1 is a 6 health card. His keywords break down to 2 of them being blank, 1 fast, 2 guard, and 3 have a combo fast guard on them. King Sphinx is definitely one of the most popular of the Season 1 Monsters of the Week. And granted, again, he was only in 1 episode. I think he made a cameo at some point as well, like later on in different episodes or whatever. But this is the only one where he was there, he was doing stuff, and he was like forefront as the main villain. You found him in a bunch of different video games after that. I had a tall toy and a small toy of him. He was all over the place. But at that time, it was, again, Season 1 of Power Rangers. Bandai and Saban were kind of just getting their footing with the series in order to see what it is that people would buy, because they would literally just put out everything out there from every monster and every character from the show and just see what people would buy. I bought it all because it was crazy. So we have right here Gale Forced Wind. This is his blank card that I mentioned was one that enabled him to move Rangers out of a battle. 3 health, again it's blank, 2 of these are within his deck. Remove 1 Ranger from this battle and move their figure to the next location clockwise. that ranger must discard their entire hand. Ooh, this is a threat level 5. Like, starting off strong right here with this card. This is a dangerous, dangerous card, because if you're going up against King Sphinx with only a duo of rangers, you've now knocked yourself down to 1, regardless of anything. And then that ranger has to discard every card in their hand should you not be able to knock this out before it triggers. Now, it's only 3 health, so it's not like a huge thing in order to, a lot of damage you have to put on it. But still, if it's guarded by other things or like comes up really quickly in the lineup and you don't have a chance to like get around it, losing a ranger in battle is detrimental to the fight. I also don't know exactly how this would work in solo mode because all 3 rangers move together. Maybe that's exactly what it is. Maybe one ranger goes away. I have to discard all of their cards and I can't draw or do anything from them again. And will need to use an action in order to re-link up my team. So that's how I would predict it would work in solo, which would make it even more deadly. Definitely a level 5 threat. Next, we have his Scepter Barrage, a fast guard keyword. So this is immediately going to the front of the line, and then it's starting to protect things as well. There are 3 of these in his deck, so be careful as these start coming out and protecting things like the Gale Force Wind or whatever else he has. 4 health card, again, it's fast guard. Deal 2 damage to a single ranger 4 times. Ideally, this is deal 2 damage, deal 2 damage, deal 2 damage, deal 2 damage, but it all goes to a single ranger. So it's a lot of like little pings that you're going to be firing at, and the ranger is just going to be taking it and going down. That's why this is a threat level of 4, because ultimately that is 8 points of damage that that ranger is going to take. But they're all individual things. So if you flip it over and it's a 3 shield, you can't subtract it from the 8. It's 2 damage, 3 shield, go to the bottom, and then you got to keep flipping for the other 2 damage. So this attack could really thin out a ranger's deck very, very fast. It is extremely deadly. You don't want this to power up. You don't want this to go off at all. The problem is with it being fast, it's a very good chance that it will. Just as soon as you see it, start thinking about what you can do in order to reduce damage, and hopefully you have a ranger that can tank it as well as they can, at least. All right, next we have his Sphinx Slam. There are 2 of these within his deck. 5 health, the guard keyword, which isn't so bad. Guards can't guard, so anything else that's on the field that's, adjacent to this with a guard, you'll be able to hit them out and everything like that. Which is why this is going to be a threat level of 3, because as a guard, you definitely want to get rid of it in order to open up other things, but the deal 5 damage, the ranger who suffers this damage must discard 1 card from their hand. It's not the worst. It's not the worst effect out there. I've seen a lot worse from monsters and everything. Of course, you never want to discard a card, and 5 damage could at least knock down it's a guaranteed 1, 2, maybe 3 cards down to your graveyard, into your discard pile, I should say. I keep calling it a graveyard every so often. Sorry about that. But then it's also the discarding of 1 from your hand. Now, again, as a solo player, it's not the worst thing in the world if I have to discard something, because I always seem to draw really quickly anyway. But if you're in a group of maybe only 2 or 3 rangers going up against King Sphinx, that 1 card could be pretty tough in order to do I really want to get rid of it type deal? So at least with this as a guard, you can target it pretty quickly, knock it out. 5 health is a bit to deal with, but a really strong boosted attack should be able to block it and send it away. And finally, we have the Cobra Beam. Only 1 of these within his deck. A fast attack, 6 health, so this will go immediately to the front. Deal 4 damage each to half of the rangers in this battle, rounded up. So if you have 3 rangers in the battle, 2 are taking 4 damage. If you have 4 rangers in battle, 4 are taking damage. If you have 2 rangers in the battle, 1's taking damage. Rounded up type deal. Look, we went from 5, 4 to 3, and now we're at a threat level 2 with this one, because honestly, out of all of the other cards within his deck, this is the least of your worries by far. If you manage to get those other fast cards in the mix, early on, and then you pull the Cobra Beam and it moves to the front, consider that a blessing. The fact that it has 6 health is kind of annoying because that's a lot that you have to knock down, but having to be able to deal 4 damage to 2 rangers or whatever in a battle isn't so bad. It's definitely the least amount of damage that all the other cards do that King Sphinx has. So let this trigger off, let it do a good setup in the beginning, do some type of powerful maneuver or something like that in order to set up a, ignore guard or add dice to an attack or something like that. So this way, when this goes, you do the blocking, have the rangers go, massively powerful attack, clipping this Sphinx wings and sending him back to where he belongs. He'll swallow you whole, the Terror Toad. A toad-themed monster that can literally eat his enemies. This ravenous, gluttonous amphibian can never get enough as he draws powers from those that he consumes. Invulnerable to almost all attacks, his weak spot is actually the horn on the center of his head. Destroying that and then damaging a weak point within his neck causes the creature to regurgitate all that he swallows, weakening him and enabling him to be destroyed once and for all. That's disgusting. Terror Toad is a monster class enemy, of course it is, found within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, which means you need to defeat 4 of his cards in order to remove this amphibian menace from the playing board. He has a lot of very fast cards, and his unique mechanic involves stealing cards from Rangers and putting them underneath his own. Within his deck, you'll find 2 3 health cards, 3 4 health cards, 2 5 health cards, and 1 6 health card. Keywords break down to 2 of them being blank, but then 6 having a combo keyword on them. 5 of them are fast guard, and 1 is a fast passive. I mentioned this in Monsters of the Week Part 1, but there's a lot of episodes that I just don't quite remember off the top of my head. I remember Terror Toad. Terror Toad was like in my brain and everything, like especially when I was doing the research for this or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, I remembered seeing all the Ranger heads on his belly and things like that and whatnot that he ate. But I completely forgot that that was the same episode where Babu slipped the punk potion into Billy and Kimberly's drink, turning him into the punks, which was a great episode. And I wish that we saw more of Squad and Babu in these series because they were just as good like characters and villains and whatnot from the Super Sentai as they should have been in the Power Rangers, American version and whatnot. Eventually they just became comic relief and just forgotten about altogether. But this is all about the Terror Toad right now because it is time to croak, as he would say. 2 of these are within his deck. These are your blank keywords for this. 3 health, deal 1 damage to each Ranger, increases damage by 1 for each combat card currently stolen by the Terror Toad. Basically, and you're going to see this when I start going through some of his other cards, he has the ability to steal cards from your Rangers, swallowing them of sorts. You would take them and you would just kind of put him, like, you would put them underneath his, like, face or whatever. You would have, this card to the side with his head, and then you could put cards underneath this to show what he swallowed, and that would be able to give you a track of how many cards are underneath this one in order to be able to deal that much damage. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give this a threat level of 2 because it does that 1 damage to each Ranger, and it does increase for each combat card. It does have the capability of dealing a massive amount of damage, but in all honesty, as you go through Terror Toad and you see what's on the field for him and whatnot, you should be able to deal with those cards fairly easily and reduce the amount of cards that he swallows. Plus, whenever you defeat one of his cards, you'll be able to take cards from underneath it of sorts, because I think they actually slide underneath those cards, and return them to the Ranger that they belong to. So even if he swallows them, you'll be able to get rid of them. And because all of his cards are fast, this time to croak will end up probably getting pushed to the end. Actually, it'll always get pushed to the end regardless of anything. So you got plenty of time to get your cards back before this fires off. Again, it's only going to do 1 damage to everybody, which really, that's next to nothing. Next, we have Tongue Lash. And I'm going to tell you right now, the rest of these Terror Toad cards are awful. Like, if you get time to croak, consider yourself lucky because that's probably the best card to grab at any point when you're fighting this guy. Tongue Lash here, there are 3 of these within his deck. This is the fast guard keyword here. 4 health on these. Drain 1 energy, ick. Deal 5 damage, also ick. Any cards discarded for defense are stolen instead. Return those cards to their discard pile when this card is defeated or when the battle ends. So basically those cards that you would flip for defense, any of them that would go to your discard pile would then, I would probably actually slide it underneath this card within the battle sequence or whatever, because only those specific cards will go back to those specific Rangers when this card is defeated. Now, this is a threat level of 4. We're starting up really high on these. These are going to be very high threat levels. Anything that has the guard keyword on this, you need to get rid of as fast as possible because it's just going to steal cards over and over and over again. Now, very recently within Heroes of the Grid, they started introducing a remove cards from the game mechanic, which is really cool. This doesn't remove them from the game. They are just within the Terror Toad's possession. So anything that would power up for something being removed from the game, this doesn't do that. It is just in his possession. It's still part of the game. You just need to get them back by beating this guy, ripping his tongue out, and just yanking out your cards from his gut. or you can try to yank them out as he swallows you whole. There are 2 of these within his deck, 5 health, the other fast guard keyword. Again, anything with the guard keyword, really try to focus on that when you're fighting Terror Toad, because those are the ones that are going to steal your cards, especially this one. This is a threat level of 5 because steal 4 cards from the ranger with the most cards in their hand. Return those cards to the ranger's hand when this card is defeated or when the battle ends. Well, at least it's going back to the hand of the ranger rather than to the discard pile or anything along that ways, but still, like, he focuses in on a single ranger that has the most cards and just yoinks them all from their hand. That is awful. That is probably one of the worst things that could happen. Normally, whenever you're playing these things, you can probably expect to draw up to 4, 5, maybe 6 cards within your hand before you go into a battle. You might want to consider having a few extra just in case of these card stealing abilities that Terror Toad does. I've never seen anything like this before. This is absolutely insane. Him like grabbing these cards and removing them and whatnot, but it really fits his character and quite frankly is one heck of a puzzle to fight. And lastly, we have the Horn of Hunger, which is that weak point that I mentioned before. Only 1 of these in his deck. 6 health, the fast passive. This is going to go right to the front again and move itself around. And while it's on the field, it's going to do something really bad. Threat level of 4, meaning that, well, I'm going to change that. This is going to be a threat level of 5 as well. The last 2 are very big threat levels because they could cause a lot of cards to be lost. While this card is in play, each time a ranger attacks Terror Toad, that is any one of the Terror Toad cards on the field, including this one, by the way, steal the top 2 cards of their deck, shuffle those cards back into their deck when this card is defeated or when the battle ends. So you have 3 different areas where Terror Toad is stealing cards. They're really leaning into the mechanic on this one, and that's what makes him so difficult. We got this one that takes it from your deck. You have Swallow Whole, which takes it from your hand, and then you have the Tongue Lash, which takes it from your discard pile. If you do not carefully plan each one of your attacks against Terror Toad, all your guys are going to lose your cards so fast that you're not going to know what to do with them. And then the battle's going to end because somebody is going to get knocked out really quickly. Good thing is at the end of the battle, all those cards do go back to the Rangers, as they say on all these cards, so you're not losing them forever. But man, going right into this and not really having a plan to deal with this warty jerk, and just having him go and wipe out each one of your Rangers by stealing cards left and right, that is devastating. And why I love the care and thought that went into these monsters. Master Mechanical Manipulator, Pirantishead. Lord Zed's first monster he created to fight the Rangers, this piranha-inspired beast has the unique ability to freeze and control the Rangers' Zords, including the Dragon Zord. Using these powers, he was able to weaken the Dinozords enough for Lord Zed to destroy them one by one and put the Dragon Zord out of commission. Luckily for the Rangers, they were able to gain their upgraded powers and gain the power of thunder, upgrading their Zords and gaining the strength needed in order to fry this fish once and for all. You may have guessed this already, but Pirantishead is a monster class enemy within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, requiring 4 cards to be defeated before running this fish off the field. His special mechanic is Zord Manipulation. Very unique to him, very annoying to deal with. Within his deck, you'll find 1 3 health card, 4 4 health cards, and 3 5 health cards. His keywords break down to none of them having blanks. 2 are fast, 5 are guard, and 1 is a passive. We're starting off strong here with a level 5 threat because this is probably one of the worst cards I've ever come across when playing against this guy. Zord Lockdown, 3 health passive. At least there's only 1 of these in his deck, so that's pretty good. While this card is in play, Rangers cannot use Zord abilities. Completely locks down the Zords, hence the name, obviously, like that. You just can't do it. He's frozen them completely. You can't access them. You can't do any of their specials. If they're not exhausted, then you can't do anything. You have to get rid of this card first in order to be able to use your Zords again, regardless of whatever else his powers are. Yeah, so you definitely want to get rid of this as soon as possible because having the ability to not use Zords can be detrimental to the fight. Now, you could fight Pirantishead in round 2, maybe unlocking only 1 Zord already and whatnot, so it's not like you're really crippled in a way where it's like you have 5 Zords sitting in reserve and you can't do anything with them because he's frozen them all with this card. But at the same time, you can't do anything with the ones that you have. So get rid of this card, get back to those Zords, knock them out. We're going to follow up with his Chumchucks. These are like a pair of nunchucks that are shaped like fish, apparently, which are never actually mentioned as a name in the show, and I don't think he even really used them other than like pretending to play him as a flute and shoot his water or something like that. It was a weird combination of things, but you know, I watch that episode again doing the research for this, and I realized that Pirantishead didn't really do much of anything like physically within that those 3-part episodes that he was there. He just moved the Zords around, controlled them, had the Zords do all the fighting, and even when Pirantishead was fighting, he just kind of stood there, which was weird. Should have used his Chumchucks. There are 2 of these within his deck. They are the fast keyword on all of them, 4 health, deal 4 damage to each ranger with at least 1 Zord card. If no Zord cards are in play, deal 2 damage to each ranger. This is a threat level of 3. This isn't really that horrible of a card to deal with. Again, if you haven't gained any Zords yet, it's probably even better. Deal 2 damage to each ranger, that's fine. But this also is going to really determine which characters have Zords attached to them already. Now, if you're having a 3 or 4 player game, you're going to have a wild Zord in there that you would assign to somebody. That always is going to be assigned as soon as you get the Zord, so it's not like you can swap it around in the middle of this whatever to have somebody take less damage and whatnot. Be honest with it. If somebody has a Zord attached to them and it's not in their normal Zord, keep that going because then the Chumchucks are going to have to deal some damage to it and everything like that. So still, 4 damage isn't the worst. You can probably get away with, you can really get away with 0 damage if you're really lucky on this. Well, 2 damage to each ranger, which is fine. But I don't know, there are worse cards like this next one for sure. Zach is getting blasted here with this powerful current. 2 of these in his deck, 4 health, the guard keyword on all of them. So this is something you definitely want to take out as soon as you can. This is going to be a threat level of 5. So here we go. Another big one. Exhaust all Zord cards in play. If 1 or fewer Zord cards were exhausted this way, deal 3 damage to each ranger. See, so now this kills you regardless of where you are within the game. If you're fighting Pirantishead early and you only have 1 Zord, this is going to deal 3 damage to everybody. If you're later in the game and you haven't used any Zords yet going up against him, he knocks them all out for the round, mind you, because Zords do not unexhaust until the end of a round, or if you have a card that says otherwise. So his ability to wipe out some of your strongest cards that you have at your disposal in order to defeat him is crazy, crazy, crazy. And definitely focus on something like this as soon as you can. Yes, Zord Lockdown, you want to get rid of that as well, but this will force you to exhaust those cards regardless of anything. So I'd probably even go with this over Zord Lockdown first and then take down the Zord Lockdown, like if this is like guarding it or whatever. So, oh man, what a rough enemy. That's why I love these monsters so much. These are your challenges right here, my friend. Get those villain packs. Those are where your challenging monsters and bosses are. It's fun to have them in the Kickstarter for sure, but man, this is something else. Hijack attack, 5 health, guard keyword. There are 3 of these within Pirantishead's attack. This is a threat level of 4. Deal 4 damage each to half of the rangers, rounded up. Increase this damage by 1 for each Zord in play. Again, another one of those cards that could be extremely deadly late game. Like if you have unlocked all 5 of your Zords going up against Pirantishead, this is doing 9 damage to half of the rangers in battle. That is ridiculous amount of damage for a simple monster to do. I also like how he's sitting on top of the Tyrannosaurus' head, doing again that thing. He's playing the Chumchucks like a flute and spitting the water around it and making it do it. Yeah, that's really all he did in the show, to be honest with you. Just spit at the Tyrannosaurus and the Dragon Zord and make them kind of move around on his own and whatnot. But holy jeez, this could be so terrible. Now, I guess you could also say that if you don't have a lot of Zords, you could be able to handle this because 4 damage isn't the worst, going to like, 1, 2, or 3 rangers, depending on how many you have. But generally, you're going to have at least 1 Zord, so why bother having to deal with that damage? Just take this out, remove it from his deck, and really start whittling away at this nasty fiend right here, because he's a toughie for sure. Leader of the Mutant Rangers, Commander Crayfish. Commander Crayfish, obviously a crayfish-themed monster. commands the Mutant Rangers, who are evil doppelgangers of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. They really don't look that different. They look like the Rangers, but they have putty hands and feet. A frontline general that commands his forces just as good as he fights. Crayfish could have easily beaten the Rangers if they hadn't upgraded their weaponry. Even the Mutant Rangers were able to stand toe-to-toe with their matching Ranger. In the end, the Rangers stood victorious, and even when Crayfish and some of his Mutant Rangers went into giant form, this crustacean was cooked to a crisp thanks to the Ultrazord. Seriously, any reason I can get the show Titanus, I'm taking it. Commander Crayfish is a monster-class enemy within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, meaning that you need to defeat 4 of his cards in order to butter him up and toss him on the grill for good. He has a decent variety of attacks, but his main thing is damage increasing based on certain conditions on the field. Within his deck, he has 2 3-health cards, 5 4-health cards, and 1 5-health card. His keywords break down to 3 of them being blank, 2 of them fast, 2 of them guard, and 1 passive. I never realized within the first 2 seasons of Power Rangers, which I guess makes sense because there's about 100 episodes or so, that there's a lot of evil Rangers floating around. I mean, Tommy as the Green Ranger was like the #1 that we all knew about, but then like there's the ones here that Crayfish is commanding. There's another set that Zed controlled, and like other Rangers turning bad and betraying and everything like that. It's just wild to think that there was so many evil Rangers within the first 2 seasons that you kind of forget about it here and there. And yep, this is where we are right now with this, with Crayfish commanding his. But before we get into that, we do have the Shellfish Slasher, tongue twister right there. There are 2 of these within his deck. They each have 3 health. It is the guard keyword. Deal 4 damage. That's it. Simple, easy. Threat level of, I mean, I'd probably say I'm only going to give it a 3 because you need to prioritize it in order to get rid of the guard. There's only this and another, well, the same card, I should say, that have the guard keyword, just those 2. So if this is on the field, you really should get rid of this first in order to be able to attack something else. But he does have worse cards within his deck already, so you may want to try to find ways around it and whatnot. Anything that ignores guard, I would probably take over knocking this out first, and then even set up for something big a turn after this triggers would be fine too, because again, he just deals 4 damage. It's a single shot of 4 damage to a Ranger. A lot of Rangers nowadays have the ability to reduce damage or regain health or swap cards or something like that. So plenty of ways around this, plenty of ways in order to avoid or reduce the damage coming in. This is a great setup card to make sure you have something strong to go into the next round with to take out as many cards as you can in one shot. Next, we have the Claw Crusher. There are 3 of these within his deck. These are 4 health cards, no keywords on these whatsoever. Deal 3 damage to a single Ranger twice. All right, so that's going to have to be a threat level of 4 right there, just a little bit higher than the last one. Basically, what it's 3 damage to a single Ranger twice. You're doing 6 damage to a Ranger, but because it's 2 individual shots of 3 damage, it's not like you can flip it over and just keep reducing it depending on how many shields you have. You could end up losing a lot more cards because you got to do 3 damage, resolved, 3 damage again. So it's interesting along that way, because if you have damage reduction, it will only apply to 1 of the 2 3s unless you have something that does them all. I mean, I've been seeing a lot of cards lately where it reduces damage to all hit a monster or boss or whatever does in a single round. Yeah, a lot of these cards that I'm showing you, not only in this Monster of the Week set, but last week as well, do multiple hits in a single attack. So those cards are very useful against these classic monsters. Crayfish Command, I'm a little bit on the fence with. It's either a threat level 2 or a threat level of 4, depending on where you are. There are 2 of these within his deck. This is a health of 4. It is a fast keyword, so it's going to go right to the front. Deal 2 damage, increases damage by 1 for each foot soldier in this location. Really, it depends on where you are. If you're fighting Crayfish at a spot that is max, and it's like a 7-figure limit, that's 9 damage. That does 9 damage. If Crayfish is by himself, you've defeated all of the foot soldiers already. That's 2 damage. That's nothing. You might as well just let that go off and have a good day with it and whatnot. So it really all depends on the amount of foot soldiers that are in the location that determine the priority for this particular one. I'd say you could probably go up to like 4 or 5 damage before you should really start considering getting rid of this before it triggers and whatnot. So I mean, do it at your own risk, figure out the way that you want to do it. I like that it actually shows the mutant rangers there, which they look exactly like the regular rangers, but they have putty patrol arms and feet as well. You don't see that. So great design. Way to make them stand out. Very good. And finally, the deformed power sword. And the only one in his deck of this, it is a passive ability, 5 health, deal 5 damage when this card resolves. So it's like, it's still an attack, it still counts or whatever, but it doesn't happen until the card turns sideways. However, while this card is in play, each time an adjacent enemy card deals damage, increase that damage by 2. Oh my goodness, that is... And again, it's adjacent enemy, so not only is it going to affect the sides of the card, a foot soldier underneath this as well is going to have that damage increase, you know, in addition to it. And if you imagine having something like, I don't know, a swarm attack under there and a lot of figures and whatnot, that's a lot of damage that all of these cards can do, powered up from this deformed power sword right here. Like, it is crazy. And the reason it's the deformed power sword is because Crayfish is the red ranger of the mutant rangers. There is no red mutant ranger. And each one of the other mutant rangers has a weapon that looks like a deformed version of the character that they're copying. I believe in Super Sentai, it looks like their original weapon, just a little bit grayed out and whatnot, as opposed to their power weapons, which look more like flashy with their dinosaur designs on them and everything. So very, very cool to see all that. Very cool how they incorporated that into here. I think I mentioned this is a threat level 5. If I didn't, it's a threat level 5 because increasing damage is terrible, especially when you have cards that I showed before that do those multi-hit attacks. Getting hit multiple times, even by even stronger attacks, never a good time. Get rid of this as fast as you can. If it hits the field, you'll be better off in the long run. Where's Captain Planet when you need him? Going up against the Polluticorn. Polluticorn is a winged unicorn-like monster with dragon hands and feet. Out of all the monsters created by Finster, Polluticorn is one of the most aggressive and dangerous ones. He'll stop at nothing to cover the world in his pollution, and refuses help from his allies even when pushed to his limits. Polluticorn's main weakness is his horn. Knocking that off significantly reduces his power, turning the tide to the Rangers and sending this monster to the recycling center. As with everything else I've covered so far, Polluticorn is a monster-type enemy within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, requiring you to defeat 4 of his cards in order to clean up the mess that he has made. A big thing within his deck are divided spread damage. A lot of AoE right here for this guy that you can either choose how it gets divided or it just gets divided for you. Within his deck, you'll find 2 cards that are 3 health, 3 that are 4, 2 that have 5 health, and 1 6 health card. And his keywords break down to 3 of them are blank, 2 of them are fast, and 3 have the guard keyword. The Polluticorn episode was always interesting to me because I believe it began with Rita taking the credit for all of the pollution in the world. Like, one of her dub lines was, my pollution will destroy the whole planet. And I'm like, Rita, we were polluting this planet long before you got here, so I don't know what you think you've been doing this entire time. So, but hey, she made a monster in order to speed it up. Isn't that wonderful? Prismatic Orbs will be his first card that we'll be looking at right now. There are 2 of these within his deck. 3 health, fast keywords, so they go right to the front, deal 2 damage to each ranger twice. So there you go with the first one of him just kind of spreading out. Again, there's a good amount of small little pingy damage to this, but if this has any way of increasing in damage, it just makes it even worse. This particular one, it will be a threat level of 2. It's really not that bad, but like a lot of these that we've seen in this episode, they just get progressively worse as we go along. 2 damage to each ranger twice, again, is like 2 damage and then 2 damage. You should be able to handle that. You should be able to deal with that pretty quickly. This is the only fast ones that are in his deck. So this is the first one you're going to have to take care of. Feel it that, like, you're going to lose that turn, you're going to take some damage, boom, get right back into the fight, jump back in, and show this horse, dragon, winged Pegasus thing. It's a mishmash of weird, disgusting stuff. Who's in charge? Next, we have Ferocious Strength. 3 of these are in his deck, and it shows off just how strong the Polluticorn is, which in the show, he was a very, very strong contender, throwing around the Rangers like crazy. Like I said, there are 3 of these in the deck. This is a threat level of 3, simply because it is a guard keyword, which you should get rid of in order to deal with other things, and it deals 5 damage. 4 health, which isn't so bad. That is something that you can probably deal with within like an attack or 2 or a good boosted attack. Definitely get rid of this as soon as you can, just so you don't have to deal with that 5 damage. But it's really more of, if you don't have anything to get around the guard, definitely try to take this out in order to open up those cards that you can hit. If you have things that ignore guards or characters that just have those abilities and whatnot, maybe you want to take the hit on this and be fine with that. 5 damage isn't the worst thing. He does have a lot worse in his deck that you should take care of first. For example, Toxic Tornado. Man, you had Zach taking a shot of electricity on the Pirantishead, and now you have the Mastodon being blasted by this. What do you guys have against the Mastodon and Zach and everything? Come on. This is a level 4 threat, so here we go. 2 of these in his deck. 5 health, no keyword. So again, you have to get around guard in order to hit it if it's next to one. The Rangers must discard a total of 4 cards divided as they choose. As I mentioned in my Monster of the Week Part 1, I think that discarding cards is just as bad as losing energy, because both of those, like, that's what you do. That's your entire shtick. You need energy to play cards. You need cards to do damage. If you lose any one of those, you can't do anything. So anything that forces you to discard cards is just tremendously bad. And in a solo mode, which is again what I always play, I only have 7 cards in my hand. You asked me to remove 4 of them because I have to, that's just how it is. I have to remove 4 of my cards in my hands. I'm now down to only 3 choices on each turn that I can do in order to figure out a way in order to destroy this guy and knock him out. So yeah, for me, if I can get around guard and get rid of Toxic Tornado as fast as I can, that's going to be my focus. And lastly, we have the Unicorn Blaster. Only 1 of these in his deck, which is good. This is a threat level of 4, which is bad. 6 health card, no keywords on it. So again, if it's guarded, you got to figure out a way around it, but that's a lot of health to deal with. Deal 9 damage divided amongst the Rangers as they choose. So when you divide damage, you do have to declare how much each character takes before they take it. And you have to have the entire set of it declared before anybody starts flipping over cards. So you can't be like, Zach, take 2. All right, I did 3. Go to the all right, take 2 more. No. You have to be like, Zach, you're going to take 4. Billy, you're going to take 3. Trini, you're going to take 2. All right, let's do this. You know what I mean? Like, you have to figure out exactly, I think that was 10 that I did there. Whatever, it doesn't matter. You have to figure out exactly where each of the damage is going before anybody starts flipping over cards. So that's what makes stuff like this pretty dangerous, because you got to watch to see how many cards are in somebody's deck remaining. If they only have like 2 or 3 cards, it's like, all right, do you have a 3 shield in there? Do you have 2 shields in there? Will you be able to take X, Y, and Z and reduce it for us? A lot of planning, a lot of strategy goes around in order trying to figure that out. So that's why I label this high, because I'd rather just not deal with it, rather just destroy it and not have to deal with it. But if you do, be very careful who you choose, or Polluticorn is going to blast them out of existence. And there you have it, everybody. Part 2 of my Monster of the Week special, being able to cover a bunch of different monster enemies that you are able to find within Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. Again, you're able to find these guys in Villain Pack 1 and these guys in Villain Pack 3. There are 5 villain packs out there right now, each having a variety of monsters, bosses, and nemesis figures. Nemesis are basically monsters, but they do individual things on their turns and whatnot. Like they're way worse to deal with, trust me, like that. Going forward with this, I don't think there's going to be any more Monster of the Week episodes, because every other thing that I have kind of relates to, other series and things along that way. I might be able to pull off one more depending on what it is. But I don't think going forward we're going to really see any more of this. Like, again, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1 and 2 were the most popular season. Those were the ones that got the entire series off the ground. We wouldn't be anywhere today if those 2 seasons had bombed. So a lot of those monsters and a lot of those characters that you met within those episodes do hold a great significance for the series, whereas you can do a Monster of the Week for SPD or Time Force or whatever, and they're just kind of forgotten. That's why I really, really like the Rinchi Beast from, Merciless Minions, I think it was, or something like that. Wherever the Rinchis came in, the Rinchi Beasts from this game are cards that show Monsters of the Week for Jungle Fury. I know the Blue Heads weren't exactly that, but I really think that you could have elite minions in all of the series showing off all of the Monsters of the Week, except for Mighty Morphin Season 1 and 2, because again, that's just what the most popular ones are. But who knows what they're going to do. As of this recording, RenCon has not gone off yet. I'm still about a week away from it after I record this, but you know, it's been already done and everything since at this point that you're watching it. So you guys know a lot more than I do at this moment that I'm recording. Hopefully we'll be able to see some cool stuff. Hopefully we'll have a great idea of what this big Kickstarter is going to be. I'm sure I'm going to be covering it very soon after it's announced, after I kind of figure stuff out and just kind of process it for myself and just see exactly what it all is. But, you know, with that said and done, I want to hear from you guys now. Let me know what you thought of these 5 monsters right here. Do you have any of them within your collection? Have you gone up against them? Some of your strategies? Which one do you like? Do you remember their episodes? And did you happen to have any of the toys growing up with them? I didn't have so much of I had a large figure of King Sphinx and a large figure of Pirantishead. I didn't really have any more of these guys in my collection. I know Polluticorn existed. I don't remember if Crayfish and Terror Toad had action figures, you know, associated with them. They probably did, who knows? But let me know what you guys have. And then of course, as always, thank you all so much for checking out this episode. Let me know again what you think down below. And of course, in order not to miss any future Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid action that I'm going to be doing for you guys, I have another breakdown coming out within a week from this one, actually, focusing on bosses. So 5 bosses you would see in the game. That should be fun to break down. And then just other things I have planned as well. Not only Power Ranger related, but other fun things for you to enjoy. Be sure you are subscribed to the Home Gamer Dad so you don't miss any of it. If you wish to support the channel even further, there are ways to do that down in the description section below, the big one being the affiliate links that I have down there. If you're thinking about picking any of these things up, definitely use those links. Purchasing through that really goes a long way to helping the Home Gamer Dad grow. Really, it does. Like, it helps out immensely, more than you can think. But regardless of anything, no matter what you do, your view right now, you liking this video, leaving your comments, sharing it. Where are you sharing this to? What websites? What social media outlets are you sharing this to? I'd love to know. And of course, you're subscribed. All go a long way to really growing the channel, giving me the time and the ability that I need in order to sit down and make these videos for you, breaking down these enemies, showing them off, and giving you a little bit more clarity about what it is that you will find within the game, if it's something that you'll like, you won't like, or just in general, getting a good idea about it. In any case, thank you all once again. You've been amazing. Take care of yourselves and each other. We are family forever, gaming together. Until next time, when we cover a bunch of bosses that are actually all kind of related to Rita Repulsa, if you can believe that, give or take on the one. The one's a very loose connection, but the other 4 definitely are. I will see you in the next one. You guys have a good one. Take care. See you then. Happy Halloween, everyone.